Chapter 8. Assassins in the Light. The light came before the blades. It arrived the way a storm does when the sky has been too still for too long, without warning, without mercy, and with the terrible confidence of something that believed it had every right to be there. I felt it press into my chest first, a crushing weight behind the breastbone, as if invisible hands had seized my ribs and begun to squeeze. My breath hitched, my vision dimmed at the edges, the world narrowed, sharpening into lines of purpose and necessity, not guidance, not communion, a verdict. My knees locked before I could stop them. Years of training surged up instinctively, drowning thought beneath reflex. Stand straight. Lower your gaze. Still your doubts. Receive. That was when I knew, truly knew, that this was not a summons. This was judgment. This was an execution already decided, and I was meant to be the blade. The pressure intensified, sliding inward, seeking purchase, not in my muscles, but in my certainty. It pushed against every oath I had ever sworn, every lesson etched into my bones, every moment I had been taught that obedience was virtue made flesh. My hand twitched toward my sword. The ease of it terrified me. I had always believed that if I were ever commanded to do something truly wrong, I would feel the resistance immediately, revulsion, horror, righteous fury. Instead, what I felt was familiarity, comfort, the terrible relief of having a decision taken from me. A scream tore through the morning air, sharp and sudden, cutting cleanly through my thoughts. Then another. Then chaos erupted. Bells rang, not the measured call of warning drills, but wild, overlapping peals torn loose by panic. Doors slammed. Voices cried out from the lower terraces as people scattered without knowing where safety lay. Emberfall was under attack. Ariane stood beside me on the upper terrace, hands folded calmly, her expression unreadable. "They've begun," she said. Her voice held no fear. That frightened me more than the screams. "They won't negotiate," Bram said behind us, already moving. Heavy boots striking stone with purpose. His hammer was in his hand, runes along its head, dim but steady. Maeryn never does when truth is involved. Maeryn stepped in front of me without a word, shield raised, stance wide. Her broken gauntlet caught the morning light, the fracture in its metal glowing faintly like a scar that refused to heal. Her jaw was set. "How many?" she asked. Caelan's bow was half raised, his gaze fixed on the eastern stairways. "A full correction squad. Obedientists. At least 6. Maybe more, and they're not alone." My stomach twisted. Obedientists were not sent lightly. They were paladins, stripped of interpretation, trained until hesitation was excised like a tumor. Their oaths were shorter than ours, cleaner, merciless in their simplicity. Command is righteousness. They did not ask why. They did not care who. They only executed, and they were coming here not merely to kill, but to prove. The pressure surged again, harder this time, slamming into my thoughts like a wave against stone. With it came the echo of divine authority. Solon's voice stretched thin, distorted like light forced through a cracked lens. My vision blurred, not words at first, alignment, the sense that there was only one correct shape for the world and everything else was deviation. Then the voice resolved, heavy and impersonal. "By decree of the Radiant Tribunal, the Oracle of Emberfall is condemned." My heart hammered painfully against my ribs. "Caelan Dawnspear," the voice continued, inexorable, "by virtue of your oath and station, you are commanded to carry out the sentence. Executor, not whispered. Declared, the word struck like a hammer blow to the soul. My fingers brushed the hilt of my sword. That moment was the most damning of my life, because a part of me wanted it to be over, wanted the simplicity, wanted the absolution of obedience. Ariane turned her head and met my eyes. There was no fear there, no accusation, only trust, waiting. Something inside me shifted, not shattered, but cracked like a foundation stone, finally yielding under too much weight. "No," I said aloud. The word echoed across the terrace, thin and strange. The pressure exploded in response, slamming into my skull with a force that I cried out and dropped to one knee. White light flared behind my eyes, burning and chaotic. "You will obey. I will not," I snarled through clenched teeth. Reality itself seemed to resist the refusal. The air vibrated. My heart stuttered, then surged, as if even my body was uncertain which authority it belonged to. Then steel rang. The first Obedientist vaulted up the stairway, white and gold armor gleaming, sunburst sigil blazing like a brand across his chest. His sword was already in motion, not angled toward me, but toward Ariane. Maeryn moved faster than thought. Her shield crashed into his blade with a thunderous crack, sparks spraying across the stone. The impact forced him back a step, surprise flashing across his face as his training recalibrated. She wasn't the target. She didn't care. "Bram," she shouted. "Get her inside. Now." Bram was already there, one massive arm guiding Ariane toward the inner sanctum. The oracle went willingly, her steps unhurried, her trust unshaken. That trust burned hotter than any divine fire. Two more Obedientists surged onto the terrace, movements precise, synchronized. Their eyes were empty of doubt, serene in a way that made my skin crawl. I recognized that serenity. I had worn it once. I drew my sword. No radiant flare answered. No blessing sang along the blade. Just steel. For the first time, that felt honest. One of the Obedientists stepped toward me slowly. He didn't rush. That alone set him apart, while Maeryn slammed into another attacker and Caelan's arrows hissed up from below. This one advanced with deliberate care, blade angled low, shield high, feet placed with exacting discipline. He studied me, not my stance, my hesitation. "You're fighting the command," he said calmly, as if remarking on the weather. "You shouldn't do that. It hurts less if you let it finish." The pressure behind my eyes pulsed again, not sharp, but insistent, like a finger pressing against a bruise. "I'm not letting it finish," I said. He nodded once. "Then I'll do it for you." He moved. Faster than any man in full Tribunal plate had a right to be. His sword came up in a clean diagonal cut, not meant to kill, but to disarm. Humane, efficient, final. I barely caught the blow. The impact rang through my arms, numbing my fingers. Light flared along his blade, not radiant brilliance, but certainty, the kind born of never questioning whether one's strike was justified. I staggered back a step. "You feel that resistance," he said, pressing forward. "That's the light correcting you." "No," I grunted, twisting aside as his next blow carved a furrow in the stone. "That's the light being forced." He shook his head, almost sadly. "You're assigning intent where none exists. The light is, we serve. Anything else is arrogance." I lunged, aiming for the shoulder joint, one of the few weaknesses in Tribunal armor. My blade connected and skidded, not deflected, refused. Light flared across his pauldron, twisting my strike aside at the last instant. Pain lanced up my arm as the backlash jarred my shoulder. I gasped. He did not capitalize immediately. Instead, he stepped back, half a pace. "See," he said gently. It doesn't want you to win. Rage flared, hot and dangerous. I don't care what it wants. I attacked again, abandoning precision for momentum. We traded blows in tight, brutal arcs, steel shrieking, sparks flying. Every strike I landed felt slightly wrong, like swinging underwater. My invocations flickered and died before they could take shape. His never did. He fought like a man being carried. You were one of the best, he said between strikes. We all knew that. Dawnspire's golden sun. He hooked my blade with his shield and wrenched it aside, following with a pommel strike that snapped my head back. Stars burst across my vision. But the best of us don't ask why, he continued. They trust. Trust, the word cut deeper than any blade. I had trusted. I had trusted my God, with villages, with children, with my own conscience. And now that trust was being used as a weapon. He drove me back toward the terrace edge, blows raining down with a merciless efficiency. My arms burned, my breath came ragged. The light refused to answer me fully. My prayers fragmented into useless sparks. He twisted sharply. My sword tore free from my grip and skidded across the stone before vanishing over the edge. His blade stopped inches from my throat. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. You can still end this, he said softly. Kneel, acknowledge the command. Let me finish it. The pressure peaked, a roaring presence filling my skull. Submit. I looked past him, at Maeryn bleeding but unbowed, at Lysa, fire trembling in her hands as she fought not to burn her own city, at Ariane standing calmly in the doorway, refusing to hide, and finally at myself, the boy who had sworn an oath believing obedience was goodness. No, I said. The word did not echo. It anchored. Something snapped, not in me, in the light. The pressure recoiled violently, ripping free of my thoughts like a hook torn from flesh. The Obedientist gasped, staggered his blade, wavering as his certainty faltered for the first time. What did you do? He whispered. I chose, I said. I surged forward bare-handed and drove my shoulder into his chest. He stumbled back, footing compromised, shield arm faltering as the light around him flickered erratically. He tried to recover, too slow. Maeryn slammed into him from the side, her shield cracking into his ribs and sending him sprawling across the stone. She stood over him, breathing hard, eyes blazing. You don't get to decide for us anymore, she said, and struck him unconscious with the rim of her shield. The terrace shook. Stone shattered. A massive shape landed nearby, gray tacks biting deep into the flagstones, and a voice boomed with laughter. The stone beneath my feet cracked as the great axe struck, the impact sending a shudder through the terrace, so strong it rattled my teeth. The man who landed there was massive. Fur-lined armor stretched across a frame built for war, muscles knotted like braided rope beneath scarred skin. War paint streaked his face in jagged lines of ash and red, symbols I didn't recognize, but felt old. Older than the Tribunal, older than the oaths carved into my bones. He straightened slowly, axe resting against his shoulder, and surveyed the scene with open delight. Oh, he said, grinning wide, this is a good one. The remaining Obedientists turned as one. Their formation shifted instantly, disciplined, efficient, two blades angling toward the newcomer, while the others refocused on me. Whatever disruption my refusal had caused, it had not broken them completely. Yet. Keth Stonepelt rolled his shoulders and laughed again, deep and booming, as if the sound itself were a challenge. Which one of you is in charge? he asked cheerfully. One of the Obedientists stepped forward, sword glowing with disciplined radiance. You are interfering in a sanctioned correction. Stand aside. Keth tilted his head. Correction, he repeated, tasting the word. Is that what you call it now? He did not wait for an answer. He charged. The Obedientist barely raised his shield before Keith's axe came down in a brutal overhand arc. Light flared on contact, but instead of turning the blow aside, it splintered, scattering into erratic sparks that skittered across the stone. The shield cracked. The Obedientist was thrown backward, armor shrieking as he slammed into the balustrade. The pressure in my skull lurched, not vanished, disrupted. "Keth!" Lysa shouted from behind me. Relief threaded her voice like a lifeline. "You made it!" "Told you I would," he called back, already pivoting into another swing. "Took longer than I'd like. City's got too many stairs." Maeryn was at his side in a heartbeat, shield snapping up to deflect a blade aimed at his flank. They moved together instinctively, her precision complementing his raw force in a way that felt impossibly natural. "Nice timing," she said through gritted teeth. Keth grinned at her. "I try." Another Obedientist lunged at me, blade aimed low. I met him on instinct, steel ringing against steel. The light flared unpredictably around us, his strikes clean and reinforced. Mine still struggling against resistance. But something had changed. The pressure no longer pressed directly on my will. It circled, searching. Confused. The Obedientists noticed. "You broke the alignment," one of them snarled. "No," I said, parrying a strike that would have split my shoulder. I stepped out of it. His eyes widened, not with fear, but with something closer to horror. "That's impossible." "Apparently not." The terrace had become chaos. Caelan's arrows whistled in from below, dropping one Obedientist mid-stride. Bram emerged from the inner sanctum, hammer glowing faintly as he struck the stone, sending a shock wave rippling outward that staggered two attackers at once. "Enough!" one of the Obedientists barked, voice tight with strain. "Withdraw and reset." They began to pull back, regrouping with the cold efficiency of soldiers who had done this before. They were not beaten, they were adapting, and they would return with reinforcements. "Now would be a good time to leave," Caelan shouted. "Yes," I said, "very good time." "Already planned," Maeryn snapped. Bram was already ushering Ariane forward. The oracle moved with unshaken composure, eyes scanning the battle not with fear, but with sorrow. "They will not stop," she said quietly as we formed a protective ring around her. "You've forced them to choose, Caelan, and they will always choose control." "I know," I said, "but not today." Lysa raised her hands, fire blooming outward in a controlled wave that collapsed part of the stairway behind us. Stone cracked and fell, blocking pursuit without burying the city beneath flame. We ran through Emberfall's inner passages, down corridors meant for meditation and quiet reflection, not flight. Citizens scattered before us, eyes wide with terror as they saw Tribunal armor clashing within the city walls. Bells rang again, but this time they were not warning bells. They were condemnation. Every toll felt like a sentence being passed in my name. As we burst through the lower gates and into the forest beyond, horses already waiting where Caelan had prepared them, I risked one glance back. Emberfall still stood, but the illusion of sanctuary had burned away. We rode hard, branches whipping past, breath tearing from my lungs as adrenaline slowly gave way to exhaustion. Only when the city was far behind us, when even the bells had faded into memory, did we finally stop. Night night fell quietly, too quietly. We made camp beneath towering trees, fire kept low and shielded. No one spoke at first. We were all listening for pursuit, for divine pressure, for the sound of something answering the choice I had made. Nothing came. At last, I broke the silence. "They ordered me to kill her," I said. The words felt heavier now that the danger had passed. From the beginning, that was always the command. Maeryn closed her eyes. Lisa's hand tightened around mine. Bram bowed his head, grief and vindication warring in his expression. Keth snorted. "Yeah," he said, "that tracks." I looked at him, startled. He met my gaze steadily. "My people used to say the gods speak clearest when they don't want something done. Lots of noise usually means someone's lying." That landed harder than any accusation. "I didn't obey," I said. "I couldn't." Maeryn opened her eyes and met mine. "Good," she said simply. The relief in that single word nearly broke me. I stared into the fire, watching the flames twist and dance. Real flames, honest ones, not shaped by command or doctrine. "I don't know what that makes me now," I admitted. "I don't know how much of my power will answer me after this. Or how long before the Tribunal hunts us down." Bram spoke gently. "Faith that cannot refuse is not faith. It's function. Whatever comes next, you chose as yourself." Lisa smiled faintly. "That counts for more than you think." Keth leaned back against a tree, axe resting across his knees. "Welcome to the wrong side of history," he said. "It's crowded, loud, and usually on fire. You'll like it." A strange, quiet certainty settled in my chest. Not triumph, not defiance, clarity. If the gods could be bound, then paladins were no longer instruments. They were witnesses, and witnesses do not kneel.